Prose Bros are born, chosen to watch every episode of Buffy and tell you what they think about them. This is the Prose Bros Visit Sunnydale.
Welcome to the Prose Bros Visit Sunnydale.
We visit Sunnydale.
Exactly. Our podcast where we watch every single episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Every single... Wait, we're going to watch every single episode?
Yeah, dude.
Dude, this is going to take like 3 years, dude.
Well, it's 144 episodes, so we got to get on this shit.
Damn, dude. We're going to do another one right after this, right?
Hopefully.
Okay. I hope so, too. Okay.
This is episode 1, season 1. Welcome to the Hellmouth.
Welcome, guys. Welcome to the Hellmouth. Welcome to Sunnydale. Welcome to our Buffy podcast.
Welcome to Prose Bros.
I'm really excited about this podcast, Jeff. I'm so excited. The shirt came off, man. Doing this shirtless.
Already.
I'm all ready, man. Oh, this room's a little hot, so I had to take my shirt off.
So we watched the pilot, and that was a little bit of garbage.
A lot of bit of garbage.
Yeah. This one is kind of like Pilot 2.0, Pilot done better.
I would say that one was hot garbage from China that's been sitting around for a while, and this is like new garbage, like the garbage you would make that you're ready to throw out on Monday. The
pilot was like a Samsung VR headset, and this episode is like
an Oculus.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's not going to be the end-all be-all for VR. There's a lot more to come, but it's a good start.
That's a little... a clip, so if you're fans of the show, which I don't know if anybody is.
There's no fans to our show. Even people that listen to it aren't fans. I would say that we have negative fans.
Negative. So, Eddie, what happens in this episode?
This episode is pretty much expository information. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, a lot of it.
It's essentially an episode where we're introduced to all of our main characters and some future characters that aren't going to be big role players in this episode. Will come back later in the series. Buffy comes to school after being kicked out. So the events of the movie happened, and then she gets kicked out of that school for burning up the cafeteria or the gym. And she gets moved to a new school. So she moves to Sunnydale, and she meets Cordelia and Xander and the Scoobies and Giles and everybody, and then basically gets put right into the vampire scene again, right? She has to fight the vampires. And I have to say that this episode wasn't nearly as bad as I remember it being. I think in my head and everybody's head, the first season was horrible, at least in retrospect.
Yeah, and at least this episode did have some gems. Some comments just kind of made me crack up. But it's taking itself very, very seriously right now.
I know, right? That's the biggest problem. It's like it's not as meta as it gets. And that's one of the things I love about the show is that later on it pokes a lot of fun at itself. It is... revolutionary for its time, and I say this because I really do believe that there weren't very many shows where there was a female superhero. There still aren't that many shows where you have a very, very strong female lead. Especially for the 90s, there were none, So I think this was pretty cool.
And that's what makes the first scene of the show, of this episode, great. Because it has that great role reversal where you see Darla, she gets named a little later in the episode. Essentially, you see this teenage couple sneaking into the high school.
Yeah,
the guy's a little older. You know it's a vampire show already. You think this vampire, even the skeezy dude, is going to take advantage of this girl. So they eventually get to the point where they ask each other, no one's around? Are you sure? Are you sure? She turns around to reveal that she's the vampire. She's the one taking advantage of him.
That was actually the concept that Joss Whedon thought of that created the whole show and the movie, which is basically he wanted to create a show where a girl walks into an alley and gets confronted by a monster and actually kills the monster. Was basically the concept behind it. Or in this case, girl and guy going into an alley. You think the guy's a monster. Turns out the girl's a monster. And Darla's pretty brutal, man.
Yeah.
I think this is a case similar to like Star Wars, where George Lucas claimed that he wrote like all first 3 movies in one sitting and he had the idea for everything. But Darla becomes a huge character later on with a huge, awesome, elaborate backstory. And in this episode, you can tell that that wasn't really meant for her.
It's funny, a lot of characters are like that. It's crazy to see where this show goes. Even the Darla thing is interesting. You see a Willow who's nervous around boys, which is fucking hilarious.
And who has lost about 120 pounds since the pilot.
Yes. I won't do a spoiler for future episodes, but she doesn't get that nervous around boys, I guess, anymore.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's get into it, man. Let's talk about the differences between this and the pilot. You want to do that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, first off, I think that the first half of this show, or first half of this episode, is essentially the pilot. And then the second half was like, all right, you've been picked up. Now you have to create a whole season. So they created the pilot and took it down to like maybe 15 minutes of the episode, and then had the other 30 minutes focus on the future events or what they're going to do.
They're building a mythology
for the big
that last half,
right?
Yeah.
So that's what Joss Whedon's kind of known for, is every episode has a little bad, but the overall season always has a big bad. And that's what they call the big bad would be, in this case, the Master.
Yes.
Bader. What do you think about the Master?
I'm just in this episode, I liked him a lot. He seems truly evil, and the actor playing it, so most of the actors in the show, it's weird saying because it's such a campy show, they kill it.
I completely agree with you, and I think that might be because the pilot, it's almost like they rehearsed it and then performed it, maybe reviewed it, and then rehearsed it and then performed it again. But I think specifically Buffy, Cordelia, and Xander really killed it in this episode. The Master, I think, was very underutilized in the series, and I agree with you, he was awesome. It's almost like he completely understood the character. And compared to the movie villain, I adore this version of the bad guy vampire villain. In the movie, it was, number one, the movie is a comedy. It has Pee Wee Herman and Luke Perry in it, for God's sakes. But definitely, I think villain-wise, this villain's much better.
Do you think they went too hard with the evil too early? And we'll definitely get into this a lot later, but they took a lot of the camp value out of the pilot. This first episode, it's not a lot of camp, which I like, and then later on in the series, it becomes known for. The idea of a teenage former cheerleader who's a vampire slayer is campy in itself, but there wasn't a lot. This whole episode took itself very seriously.
I think that the format changed from a 30-minute episode that was supposed to be a sitcom that maybe was supposed to be more comedy-oriented. I'm not really sure about the comedy-oriented part, but this was originally a pilot for a show that was going to be 30 minutes that was rejected and then accepted mid-season to replace something else. I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think that they really wanted to focus on the romance aspect of this show because that's what really sells, obviously sex. And
plus the 90s, being WB, UPN, whatever it was. I mean,
look at Smallville. Like, that's 10 seasons of, oh, he fucked Lois, he fucked Alana, he loves everybody. He's Superman with his super dick. His super teenage dick that's 28 years old now.
We mentioned this. We've always noticed this. So
Darla is at least 28.
Yeah. Growing up, we watched this show, and they're supposed to be all around
it's like
our age,
fucking
teenagers.
Happy Days here, man.
Yeah, they're close to 30, man.
Yeah, like Darla Julie Benz looked 28 in this episode. Charisma Carpenter, Cordelia, also looked 28-ish. Buffy looked maybe 23, 24. Xander looked 25. None of them look like they're in high school at all.
I think it gave me a complex growing up. I was like, is this
what
people should look like at like 16, 17? I'm like 15. I don't fuck, man.
Being in the bar industry for as long as I have, I know that 21-year-olds look what 21-year-olds look like, 21 to 23-year-olds, and they look young. Like, I feel right now, I'm 33 years old. I'm an old man. They look very young. They look like they're in high school to me now. When I look at this show, I go, there's no way you're 21 in a different way, you know? But I think that maybe to the benefit of the show because of the fact that they do such a good job. You know, if this was a show with a bunch of children on it, I don't know if I would have loved the character of Cordelia, or she would have come off as a bitch that could become redeemed later in the series the way she was, compared to if I saw Selena Gomez in this. I don't think I would have the same appreciation for the acting if they were kids. And I think that's why they never cast kids. Because once you're 20, you don't really learn how to act till you're 28.
Well, you have this life experience that, I'm no fucking actor, but that is brought to the table the older you are.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you going to act like a teenager written by a 40-year-old if you're not a 30-year-old?
Absolutely, right? One thing that I did write down were I want to keep track of the dream sequences in the show because I think they really play an integral part in the plot, usually of all the episodes. But right off the bat, we get a dream sequence. Buffy starts dreaming of the Master coming, and that kind of foreshadows the fact that she has a special ability to be able to see monsters and feel the presence. In the movie, that was relayed through cramps that she would get, which I think is fucking ridiculous and maybe a little misogynistic. But whenever a vampire came around, she got a menstrual cramp, and I think that's fucking horrible. This is, I think, a better foreshadowing use. And he did a killer job. I think the most exceptional thing that Joss Whedon did in the writing of the show is explaining why the vampire slayer it's really trying on the life of a teenager, showing that she just wants to live her normal life. And that's a theme throughout the entire the series, that she just wants to be normal, and she's being thrown into this. This episode pretty much does that better than anything else I've ever seen.
It's not like... Well, it's like a lot of superheroes. I guess it depends on the superhero, but I'm thinking of Spider-Man.
It's like Spider-Man, obviously, yeah. Yeah, and I think that they did a really good job showing that and hiding the fact that she's a slayer from her mother. I think they did a better job than Spider-Man. Have you ever gone back and read like Spider-Man 1 through 80?
Which spectacular, amazing
Spider-Man? I mean, Amazing Spider-Man was the very first run. But if you go back and read those first 80 comics, they're garbage. They're hot garbage. And I think they all kind of, as far as origin stories, they all go off that origin. This is far better written, just so much better.
Can I go back to something you said about the dream sequence?
Yeah.
So what I gathered from that dream sequence, just watching it right now, instantly you feel that there's this connection between the Slayer and vampires, and particularly the Master. And she has that connection throughout the entire series. But it's interesting to see that's where it began. And it totally is. The nature of vampires are sexual in itself. But seeing...
Yeah, it's a metaphor.
Yeah, seeing the Slayer and the Master and having that dynamic already, I was like, cool, this is where it started. I thought it started later on with Angel, but
that's why I'm actually pretty impressed going back to this episode and seeing themes that go all the way through the entire series. Is impressive, because I really did not think that this season had much of anything going for it. Actually, we've had friends that say, I want to be on the podcast. By the way, we're going to have guests on this podcast. We just figured we'd go it alone for the first couple episodes to give you guys an idea of what we're doing. And also, we're probably going to change up the way we do this, but most people don't want to be on the first season. Nobody really wants to come and like talk about Buffy and was it Monster from the Blue Lagoon that they do for the swim team episode that's coming up? Like, nobody wants to go through these original episodes. Everybody wants to talk about season 4 or season 5 when it starts becoming campy and very meta and making fun of itself and becomes the show that we all love and the characters are already established and developed. You know, Willow's a witch and Xander is the hero that's kind of doesn't have a power in the Zeppo episode, for example. Everybody wants to do those. Nobody wants to do the core, what created it, and it's really important. I think this season is why those seasons exist.
And plus, if we just started at midway through season 2, that'd be super fucking weird.
Yeah. We just start season 4. We're like, fuck all that. We're big Buffy fans, but fuck those first seasons. No, I can tell you what I'm not a fan of. Jesse.
Oh yeah, he sucks.
I think Jesse's on par with Fat Willow. I mean, just god awful acting, man. That guy, like you said earlier, was on 6 Feet Under, and I liked him there, and I thought that he had a lot going for him in that show. But going back to this, I'm like, wow. Did they hand him the script like a day or two before? Has he ever practiced acting in front of a mirror or something?
Well, he was kind of Xander 2.0, and you don't need another Xander because he does it so well.
I think he was definitely in there, fodder for the fire kind of thing. Just like, let's put him in there so we can have a character to kill, and also to explain that Xander did in fact have other friends.
Dude, I haven't seen the next episode yet.
Oh shit!
No, I have. I've seen it all.
But everybody listening to this has. I don't really care. Either way, Jesse dies, and I'm glad about it. What do you think about the Principal Flutie recast?
I didn't really like it.
He's pretty Jewy. He's pretty Jewy looking. I'm not saying that's a bad or good thing.
That scene with Buffy and the new principal or Principal Flutie.
I preferred the first actor, but I think that he probably didn't accept it because it's just not a really great role.
I missed her asking to see the body.
Oh, that was hilarious. In the pilot, she asks the principal?
Yeah.
Like, hey, can I see the body of... all right, so Darla kills somebody in the first scene. She hides him in a locker. Girl's talking to her friend, and that girl's name is Aphrodisiac?
Aphrodisia.
Either way, pretty shitty name.
So let me describe what happens with the scene. She's walking in, talking shit about Buffy, saying like, and what kind of name is Buffy? Another student walks by and says, hey, Aphrodisia, hey, opens the locker, and then a body falls out.
So later on, Buffy goes up to the principal in the pilot only because they took the scene out, which I think is smart because what the fuck? What kind of principal says, yeah, you can see the body?
I love that.
And she goes and examines the body like she's some kind of fucking forensic investigator. I think it's fucking horrible. I mean, I think that's probably has more to do with the 25-minute version of the pilot versus the 43-minute version of the first episode. But Jesus Christ.
Like forensic scientist. So I got a question for you. Maybe we should establish this now. What the fuck is a Slayer?
Oh, a Slayer. In each generation, a Slayer is born. So in order to fight the forces of evil, some random dudes that we don't really know about yet, and we will eventually, decided to bestow the powers of a vampire, essentially, or like a metahuman, onto a young girl. And I think that they state later that that's because they think that she'll be more docile and easier to control.
Whoa, I didn't... Okay.
They do later.
But this episode, because we're
going to get to that. So in this episode, a Slayer, she's picked by the higher-ups to fight evil. And originally in the movie, it was just vampires. In the show, it establishes right away that there's a lot more than vampires that exist.
Spooky.
Spooky. Real spooky. Essentially, they're going to take every movie monster made in the last 30 years and turn it into an episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, I think, great. I mean, Supernatural did the same thing.
And a walking shark.
Yeah, and a walking shark, eventually. Eventually, there will be a walking shark. Which is essentially King Shark, right? From the comic books.
I don't know.
I think that I think all of Joss Whedon's stuff, obviously, is heavily inspired by comic books. He's a huge nerd. Definitely Buffy is inspired by comics in the way that it's formulated. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Did you ever go to a nightclub when you were in high school that had non-alcoholic drinks that had cherries on a toothpick? Because, like, other than Sonic, I can't think of anywhere that put cherries in anything, number one. And number two, that shit didn't exist until, we went to Mexico and there were still no cherries.
No, fuck no. The only thing I remember going to was these churches.
Yeah, like Cafe Cristo or Crossroads
that you could play
Cafe.
shows, but you weren't allowed to drink.
No, they had coffee, but it was really bad and overpriced. And that's how they kept it open. They're like, we sold lattes for $5. This was pre-Starbucks.
Now
we're really fucking old.
That sounds like, you worked at a bar. That sounds like an awful fucking idea, right? To have a bunch of underage kids drinking drinks that look like they could be alcoholic with
not to
people
mention,
of all ages.
Everybody would sneak in alcohol. Everybody. If there's no alcohol allowed, everybody would have snuck in alcohol.
I guess if I was a bouncer, I would be more concerned about the vampires and less about the kids sneaking in alcohol. Sunnydale vampire. Bouncer, right? You're concerned about vampires.
Yeah, I would be concerned about a lot of things.
By the way, speaking of the Bronze, which is the nightclub, I looked up that first band that we were kind of making fun of.
It was POD, right?
No, not POD. It was Sprung Monkey.
Sprung Monkey. That sounds like a 90s band.
I don't remember them.
No, it sounds like a 90s band. I don't think that's definitely not one that I listened to.
Do you remember the song we just listened to well enough to sing it?
No, but I can almost guarantee that it was sung in this voice. Like that.
That's good. I don't know if anyone else enjoyed that, but I did.
I'm probably sure they didn't. Sorry, guys. I think the Master especially was underused in this series. He's such a great character. The actor killed it. And essentially we have this 2-part episode, one other episode with the kid, and the final episode where he was really utilized. And I really wish that, number one, right off the bat, they told us where the Master came from, which we never find out. I think that...
I like that they don't.
No? All right. I can see why you like that. I kind of think it would be great. It's like an origin story that I would have liked to see. We get to see it for everybody else. Angel, Darla, Drusilla, Spike, eventually. But we don't get to see anything about where he came from. And why does he look like that? Everybody else looks...
I don't know who any of those characters are.
Yeah, not yet. 'Cause you've never seen Buffy before. We're doing this podcast to show Jeff what Buffy is.
Wouldn't that be awful?
That would be awful. You wait for you. Maybe.
Eventually it would get good, but
it's
right
like
now...
one of those things like when like when you're dating somebody, like for example, I'm not dating, but my longtime girlfriend who's bearing my child never saw Star Wars. And when you try to go back and be like, hey, watch Star Wars with me, she fucking thinks it's horrible. And for good reason. Like, it's not that good.
I tried to do that with Jen with Willow and some of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
You can't. They're awful now. They're only scary when you were a kid.
Like, no, back in the day, this was cool.
This was awesome. Like, Nightmare on Elm Street 1 was incredible when I first saw it. Now you see those arms come out and you're like, what? Like, did they pay for, like, can I make a Nightmare on Elm Street movie? Like, I have that much money, I think. You know, it's ridiculous. Oh, no. I'm glad they got rid of the cramps. I already said that.
Weird. So, can I tell you, I'm going to keep track of the deaths on the show.
Awesome.
Current death toll, 1 vampire killed this episode and 1 human.
1 vampire, 1 human. I think we should come up with a segment like and have like little intro music for this or something. We probably won't, but I'll start going like dun 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 dun. What's a vampire kill? But I'll come up with better music.
I mean, this is like the second episode we're doing. First episode of Buffy. It will get better, just like the show. It gets better.
It gets better. We're just basically establishing characters. Speaking of establishing characters to get better, Angel. I hated his performance in this episode. I hated his performance in the whole first season. He's not broody. All the backstory that's established later can't really be detected in these. Essentially, eventually they established that he's a broody character before this and was living in a sewer.
See, but the thing is,
he doesn't look like he doesn't, not just in physical appearance, but he's acting like this cocky douchebag to her.
I think that's the nature of not knowing where they were going to go with the character.
Yeah.
We can only take Angel at face value, which is he's some older dude hitting on some girl in high school who said he wouldn't bite her. That's what we get with the character of Angel right now.
I mean, essentially, I think that he's the same character right now as he was on Married with Children. Like taking Kelly Kapowski out. Is that her name? Kelly? No, that was Saved by the Bell.
Yes.
What's the girl from
Bundy?
Kelly Bundy. Still Kelly.
Yes.
Why was Kelly given such a, like, the name Kelly given such a bad rap?
Was it
like,
a bad rap?
I mean,
it was popular in the 90s.
Stupid, dumb girls, I guess. Kelly Kapowski was an idiot. Just a fucking moron. Sorry.
You have anything else to say about Welcome to the Hellmouth?
No, I just want to jump on you, though, and have, like, an open text that says "to be continued" put on my face. Even though right now I'm shirtless, so it'd be really weird.
The listeners can pretend you're doing that.
To be continued.